Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. 3 martinis coming up.
So good to have you with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. A lot to talk about today with 2 good martinis as well as a crazy. Jim Garrity doing me a real solid going to Wisconsin to scout out the Packers and figure out how the Bears might get a leg up on them, which is not actually the case, but it's in Wisconsin.
Yeah, the red hot Bears who will have to be broken up because they've now won 3 games in a row. Never, it's not that it's never happened. It just has happened a long time. So congratulations. I'm glad one of us has happy football stuff.
Well, you got a chance to you got a chance to even things out tonight. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the season, the first half of the season, the schedule is a little bit easier for the Bears. So piling up the wins now is critical if we want to have a good run towards the end, because 6 of our last 8 games are against the division. And if you've paid attention, the Vikings, the Packers, and the Lions are all kind of good this year. So got to be ready for those. But anyway, let's get to our first good martini. And for that, we go to This Week on ABC, where Republican vice presidential nominee JD Vance appeared, and the questioner was Martha Raddatz. I'm pretty sure, Jim, that JD Vance has probably done more interviews than Trump, Harris, and Walz combined, and I'm not even sure it's particularly close at this point. He's done a lot of them, and he was pretty good from the get-go. He's really getting good now. And Martha Raddatz, man, just walking into this buzzsaw, which is totally deserved from JD Vance. She tries to downplay the significance of the gangs that have taken over at various times apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. And so that's how she couches the question, and JD Vance was more than ready for it.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border. Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs.
I saw somewhere, Jim, that we're on step 2 of the Democrats trying to make a story go away. One is that it's not happening. Now we're at it's happening, but it's not that big of a deal. And eventually we'll get to it's happening and it's a good thing. So what do you make of the question and the answer here?
2 weeks from now. Greg, think about how much more secure these apartment complexes are now that they have roving groups of men with guns, right? This is a demonstration that Kamala Harris is not a gun grabber. No one's trying to take away your gun. Okay, American citizens were taking away their guns, but no one's taking away the guns from the Venezuelans. Right? I was thinking about this in the context of another Vance interview. He did it with the New York Times. By the way, if JD Vance could do an interview with the New York Times, why can't Kamala Harris? Why can't Tim Walz? Like, talk about going into the lion's den. So he goes, and the interviewer, who I'm on with Chris Wallace's show, Lulu, her name escapes me at the moment, but basically she makes a question of like, how are you going to do home construction and expand the supply of housing while you're deporting lots of illegals? And she runs through it, and there goes from X% of Hispanics work in the construction industry. Okay. All plausible. A certain percentage of construction workers are illegal. Nobody would dispute that. Right? We might have arguments about how much, but it's there. And she says to him, how are you going to expand the supply of housing when you're deporting all of the people who build our houses? All. Right? And there's like this little verbal sleight of hand, like that you could see the 3-card Monty or something, like, where like in the process, if Trump is elected and there is this mass deportation and there is this rounding up of people who are in the country illegally, would that remove a certain number of people who work in the home construction industry? Sure. That's going to happen. Would it happen on a level that houses could not be built? I am not convinced of that. I am really, I'd be very curious about whether it would be anything more than a marginal impact. Oh, by the way, if you are deporting the people who are building houses getting paid under the table, who are in the country illegally, well, then the construction companies are going to have to hire more workers, which would actually have to be, maybe this would open up more jobs for those who are in the country legally, So it just is this, somebody said, in an argument, never use all, unless you're absolutely sure of it, don't use all, never, 100%, because it's very rarely that case. You always say that. No, you don't always say that sort of thing. In this circumstance, you notice the sleight of hand that goes on, right? Well, yes, it's happening, but it's only a handful. Well, first of all, is a handful like 3? Is a handful like 7? A dozen? What? Secondly, I think Vance accurately. How many is an okay number? We really want it to be 0. We're aiming for 0. Same thing with the number of people who come across the border illegally. Look, I know we'll probably never have perfect border security. You'll probably never have a circumstance in which not a single person attempts to sneak over the U.S.-Mexico border. But you'd really like to get that number as low as humanly possible. And we know it's been nowhere near that. We know it's been much lower in the past. We know the moment Trump took office in 2017, it dropped like a stone. Because a whole bunch of people the coyotes, the migrants, everybody was like, what's he going to do? And then it gradually creeped back up. Then COVID hit. Then it dropped like a stone again. So we need one of two things. We either need a president who's going to handle this very seriously and make this a priority, or we need global pandemic. I vote for the president is easier. It's something like the easier choice.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it's always, as the conversation gets more intense and we get closer to election day, the left always kind of lets their bias show on this issue, because when they're talking in generalities, it's, people aspiring to achieve their dreams, people wanting their children to have a better opportunity than they did. And then when it gets more intense, like, okay, fine. Who's going to scrub my toilet? Who's going to pick my fruit? Who's going to build my deck? I mean, it's all right stereotypes.
Now, I have 3 Venezuelan gang members cleaning my bathroom.
Good on JD Vance, and I'm guessing Martha Raddatz wishes she had that one back. It's like throwing the big fat pitch right over the heart of the plate at a critical moment in the game. He just smacked it out of the park. All right, well, talking about hitting it out of the park, when it comes to your metabolism, Lumen is the way you need to go. No more guessing whether you're burning carbs or fats. Lumen tells you. Literally all you have to do is wake up in the morning, grab your Lumen, take a deep breath, breathe into your Lumen, and it'll tell you exactly what's happening, and it'll tell you what you ought to be doing for your nutrition that day. It'll also help keep track of workouts, sleep, and even stress management.
Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food that you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, ideal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and even better sleep. And Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health.
So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/3ml to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/3ml for 15% off your purchase. Again, that's lumen.me/3ml. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. All right, Jim, on to our second good martini now. And it certainly appears over the last several days that even though the polls haven't shifted much, really at all in a lot of cases, the Democrats clearly feel like the momentum is moving against them. No question about it. I think that's why we saw the barrage of Kamala Harris media appearances, which was not a net plus, from saying that not a thing comes to mind as to what she would have done differently from Joe Biden, even though she's the one that claims she's a new way forward and turning the page and all that stuff. Kind of her deer in the headlights response on certain questions, despite how CBS tried to fix it for her. And just on it goes. It was not a net plus, clearly, for Kamala Harris. Then we had this weird panic mode of trying to reach out to men. They sent out Barack Obama to yell at black men for not getting more enthusiastic about Kamala Harris. Then they had that total cringeworthy ad about I'm man enough to vote for a woman. And it was the most fabricated, astroturfed ad you could ever imagine. Then you had the pheasant hunting thing. And so clearly they feel like they're not where they want to be because they have a money advantage. They've clearly got an advantage in the media. But if you look at the polls, Jim, it's not like there's been a huge shift towards Trump. There might be a small one in some of these key states, but I don't know that he's clearly ahead in just about any of them at this point. So what do you think is going on behind the scenes here? I know you wrote about it today in the Morning Jolt. And so are they over panicking? Do they have a reason to panic? What's your take here?
Oh, they have good reason to panic. I still feel like the race is roughly a 50-50 race. Each time you feel like those swing states, you get a sense of, okay, maybe it's leaning a bit this way. Like, for example, it's been a while since Trump had led a Nevada poll. And then the Wall Street Journal comes out and has him up by 5. One of the biggest lead he had in any, which is, you look at that, like, okay, I don't feel comfortable putting Nevada in the Harris camp. We'll take that away. Wisconsin, where I'm at right now, but in lovely, colder Wisconsin, let me tell you, the faucets are every bit as beautiful as they say. I'm here for the Bradley Impact Fund conference, which is terrific, but I can't say anything about it. So if I say more, ninjas will come down from the ceiling panels behind me. But let's just say wonderful people do wonderful stuff, and that's all I'm allowed to say. But so Wisconsin, you looked okay. It's been a really blue state for a long time, but you just can't find many polls where Harris is ahead by more than like 2 points. So you're right. It is not that Trump is winning and now running it down. But I think what's finally caught up with them is this phenomenon we've discussed on this podcast a couple of times. Democrats were convinced the Tim Walz pick, the rollout was great, everybody loves him, it's terrific, etc. By the way, I think we can now say the Walz pick has been something of a disappointment. It's fizzled. Dems had a great convention. I don't dispute that. I think everybody hit their marks. In each one of these cases, they went out and they executed the plan they wanted to execute. They thought they had a great convention. Little or no bump. She went out, she had what I thought was objectively a great debate. I think she beat Trump. Numbers didn't move. Certainly not in the swing states. Maybe the popular vote, it went up a little bit better for her. But, the winning the popular vote will get you a cup, with that and $3 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, as Hillary Clinton will tell you. Really $4 thanks to Biden inflation now. But that's... So you look at this, and they keep doing what they think they should be doing, but they don't see any result from it. And they kind of now Democrats are like, we're 3 weeks away from the election. There are no more debates. There probably aren't going to be many more big moments or something that's going to change. We're probably going to be sweating white knuckled until it probably won't be done on election night. We might not know some of these states the next morning. It's probably going to take a while. And when it comes down to that 1 or 2%. You really got to count all the votes. And, you'll probably have, I don't know if we'll have hanging chads again, but we'll probably have disputes and, which county is reporting latest and all that kind of stuff. Democrats thought they'd be in better shape by now. And I think all of the excitement, the media hype, the coconut trees, the memes, the joy. Greg, nobody's feeling the joy right now. It is now, it went from anxiety. I think now it's a panic attack. And you look at the, with today's Morning Jolt, the opening section, I go through just the headlines at places. First of all, there were 3 polls out this weekend that all had it pretty darn close in the national vote. Probably the best one for Harris had her up by 2 percentage points. Hey, what was Hillary in the national popular vote 8 years ago? I had by 2 percentage points. So it's no guarantee you're going to win the Electoral College vote. CNN, Harris is struggling to restore momentum in a neck-and-neck race on Election Day. Dread is growing among Democrats that the euphoria over her entry to the race in July, her successful convention in August, and her debate performance the following month have not translated yet into a decisive lead over Trump. Mika Brzezinski did a monologue Friday where she's like, the polls seem so close every time a new one comes out, neck and neck, and there's this fear that Donald Trump is poised for victory. I think it's fair for Democrats to be incredibly depressed. I think it's fair for them to be discouraged. Ezra Klein telling his readers to ignore the polls. Pod Save America guys saying why you shouldn't panic about it. Like, you would think their readership and listenership is out on a ledge, and they're trying to talk them down. It's like there is just this oh my God, we are not going to win. Why isn't she ahead by now? And I think a portion of it stems from the fact that they have he's been the center of our lives for 9 years now. Came down that escalator in June 2015. You would think Democrats would have a handle on Trump and what he does and how he appeals to voters and how to counter that. And here they are 9 years later, and they don't. They're still white knuckling it. And we'll see how, again, none of this is meant to say, oh yeah, Trump's definitely going to win. I think, it's really going to come down to these blue wall states. But, I was in Pennsylvania this weekend. There were Trump signs all over Bucks County. Now, it was similar 4 years ago, and Biden won the state, so it's not a guarantee. But man, oh man, you would think they were celebrating a holiday called Trumpmas. Everybody's got their house decorated. It's a close race, but also Democrats didn't think it would be a close race at this point, and I think that's what's just got their heart palpitations and probably reaching for a drink.
No, that's exactly right. And I think the issue here is, like you mentioned, people know what they think of Trump. Even before the escalator, they kind of knew what they think of Trump. Certainly over the last 9 years, they know what they think of Trump in this context as a politician. So Harris thinking that, if I just tell him one more thing about Donald Trump, this will be the thing that convinces them not to vote for him or to actually show up and vote for me, instead of telling people more about what she would do. And on the flip side, people had a pretty negative opinion of Kamala Harris based on the polls of her as vice president, even though she wasn't in the spotlight a whole heck of a lot. Then they have this, glitzy rollout and be like, oh, well, maybe. And then the more time goes on, even though it's this sprint from July to election day, more and more people, I think, are coming to the conclusion, yeah, that's who we thought she was.
Mm-hmm. What you see is what you get.
Oracle. Look, artificial intelligence might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested in it. So buckle up. But the problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So the question is, how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. It's called Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI.
OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application management, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle.
So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/martini. That's oracle.com/martini. oracle.com/martini. All right, Jim, today is Columbus Day, or as the left likes to call it, Indigenous Peoples Day, and they don't even really acknowledge Columbus anymore. They were perfectly fine with all the Columbus statues coming down in the wake of the George Floyd story, because, of course, the connection between that and Columbus is obvious. No, it's not. So anyway, as we celebrate 532 years, I believe, since 1492, I think it's helpful to go back just a couple of years when Kamala Harris had a lot to say about Columbus Day and not very good things to say about Columbus and basically European colonists at all. So while she tries to sound all middle of the road here for the next few weeks, don't forget she said this.
It is an honor, of course, to be with you this week as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, as we speak truth about our nation's history. Since 1934, every October, the United States has recognized the voyage of the European explorers who first landed on the shores of the Americas. But that is not the whole story. That has never been the whole story. Those explorers ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from this shameful past, and we must shed light on it and do everything we can to address the impact of the past on Native communities today.
All right, so I guess the 1492 project is coming next here from Kamala Harris. And so, Jim, so many people have documented the savagery between the tribes before the European settlers ever got here. Jarrett Stepman, husband of Inez Stepman, has written a book, The War on History. He's done an excellent job. Others have done a good job of documenting it as well. Is it a clean antiseptic history? No. But do we honor the people who dared to go where they had not a clear idea necessarily of where they were going, as obviously the Columbus thought he was in the Indies, the East Indies, when he got here, and wasn't, but the daring, the ingenuity, and the exporting of Western civilization, the greatest civilization the planet has ever known. But we can't see that. We've got to see only the negative sides of things that happened over 500 years ago.
I was going to say, even if you grant every criticism of Columbus and you say, oh man, this guy was a conqueror, he was an SOB, and the indigenous life was never the same. History changed because of what he did. Like there's no getting around that. That is one of the pivotal moments. If you're looking at human history, the history of humans on this planet, that was the moment where Europe and America came together, and that was everything that has flowed out of that. So I've been thinking about Harris in this statement. And this statement's from 2021. She's not saying it. I've seen it floating around and people saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe she's saying it now." She's not saying it now, right? She would not dare say, if you can't get her to say, anything controversial, she's not going to come out and denounce Christopher Columbus and talk about how we should all be calling this Indigenous Peoples Day today. But with that in mind, the word integrity has two terms, two meanings. One is a person who's, strong moral principles and good and all that stuff. But there's also the state of being whole and undivided. And I feel like if you want to make the argument that Kamala Harris and Democrats have no integrity, I think it's that second one that actually, it fits, because she would not dare make this statement today. You're not going to see Tim Walz or anybody else go out and say Christopher Columbus was an SOB, he was a conqueror, he was an imperialist. We should rename Columbus, Ohio. We should rename we should take his name down from everywhere. All the stuff that was happening, we were tearing down. You know, like, you want to take down Robert Byrd stuff, fine. I don't. Do you notice, like, he's the one guy who nobody tears down the statue of anywhere in West Virginia? You know, this is one time I want to join the crowd and say, yeah, let's take it down. Let's take it down. No, we take down Washington. We take down Lincoln, Columbus. No, but Robert Byrd, the Klansman, that guy gets to stay. Okay, whatever. And there's this sense that, like, we joke about, Democratic senators who sound conservative for a year or 6 months before Election Day. Then they get reelected and they go back to this, 98% voting with the administration. They have an ACU rating of like a 2. That kind of. But then it's election year, and then all of a sudden, John Tester's like, I don't even know if I'm going to vote for the Democrats this year. We see this. That is the opposite of integrity. That means you are not the same person depending on where you are in the election cycle. And I think that there is this inherent tension. You could probably find the same thing as a Republican. Republicans may campaign more moderate than they actually intend to govern. But I think we see such a vivid and stark contrast between Kamala Harris campaigning on gun control in California. Now all of a sudden she needs to win, states. Let me show you my Glock. This sudden completely. I tried to ban this a few years ago, but we're not even going to talk about that. That recommendation that Jonathan Martin passed along, that she should say that her pronouns are mama and la, instead of she and her. First of all, she's never going to do that. But two, you need to get elected. It's time to throw the entire pronoun discussion out the door. This is a thought crime in Democratic circles, except for 3 months before the election. Then it's allowed. Then all of a sudden, So I think the split, the Jekyll and Hyde. There's such a huge difference between who Democrats have to be to win outside of deep blue parts of the country, and what they actually want to do, and what they actually want to believe, and how their vision for there's such a stark one. I think that one, you could say they have no integrity in this sense. Two, I think it really causes like genuine tension within them. And I when people, Harris, there's that, deer in the headlights, the panic, the circular talk, what are the differences between you and Biden? Nothing comes to mind. All of this I think stems from this sense of, who am I? Who am I really? Am I the person I pretend to be close to the election? Am I the person who I was when I was running for president back in 2019? Am I the person who thinks nobody should be celebrating Columbus Day and it should be Indigenous Peoples Day? What do I have to be in this moment? And I think we see the consequences of this all over the election season.
Well, I've seen a White House statement on Indigenous Peoples Day. I've not seen one on Columbus Day yet. I don't think it's coming. In terms of trying to appeal to more middle-of-the-road voters, first of all, I think it's at least on paper, a win for the right, that the Democrats have to fake it so hard coming to Election Day that they know that more of Americans lean towards the right's agenda. The problem is they're capable of fooling a lot of people, and they still might win. The last thing I'm going to say is with the pheasant hunt over the weekend. It's kind of their way of subtly saying we're not a threat to the Second Amendment, which, as you know, is very similar to John Kerry's, was he turkey or pheasant hunting in Ohio just a few weeks before the election in 2004.
Actually, Greg, we hunt peasants. But it's not pheasants. It's the people who pronounce it Genghis Khan instead of the appropriate pronunciation, Gengis Khan.
Yes. And my periodic and firm reminder that anyone who uses hunting as an example of why they're not a threat to the Second Amendment, run hard in the opposite direction. So, Jim?
I'll believe that Tim Walz really is a supporter of the Second Amendment when, on a campaign stop, he shoots a burglar.
Jim Garrity from the Badger State. He'll be joining us there tomorrow as well. Also of National Review. That's kind of important. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Also, subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Monday. Join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.